All right, today we are going to be talking about perspective, uh, and our perspective specifically of other people in the church is probably where we're going to be focusing, but it applies to outside the church as well. Um, One of the things, especially as a preacher, that is, uh, we feel it, we read about it, everybody knows about it, but the passages that talk about how God composes the church, and there's all these different groups, right? And how what's amazing in the church is that God can bring groups together that outside of the church have a real difficult time coming together for a common good, uh, and maybe a little bit less. But there are groups, um, racial groups, and even in the church, I guess sometimes we kind of segregate ourselves, not necessarily segregate, but we kind of group together. It may be by economic status or age or whatever category. We kind of find people that are similar, and those are the kind of people we associate more with. And you come to church, and you probably actually have a similar group that you talk to, uh, more than others. But what's interesting is how, for the most part, you can take people. And I know in our church we have, groups of people that are politically very, I mean, philosophically different, and yet uh, we're we're very civil towards one another and very friendly towards one another, uh, as it pertains to church. Where outside of the church, you find people of different political persuasions are I find it hard to even be in the same room together. Um, and it's amazing to me that I can, as a preacher, I can go with this group and interact, and I can go over here and interact with this group, and I get a flavor for all the differences, and maybe more than people who aren't, ministering in some way. But God composes these groups together. There's a statement in Galatians, I think that we're going to use to try to work from today. In Galatians chapter 5, we were reading this last night with our family. And Galatians chapter 5, verse 14, it says, "The whole law is fulfilled in one word, that you love your neighbor as yourself." It says, "But if you bite and devour each other, then you're going to have to beware, because you're probably going to be consumed by each other. You're just going to eat each other up if you're biting at each other's heels." Now, when I read this in the past, there's a weirdness about this one statement. It says the whole law is fulfilled in one word, and then he doesn't give one word. He gives a whole sentence, a whole quote from the Old Testament. And um, well, love your neighbor as yourself. What one word? Well, the one word is obviously love. And if we are going to love one another, and I believe, then we need perspective. We need to look at how the other half lives. What are the things that the world views of other people? They are valid. Now, there are worldviews that I suppose are incorrect and things, but really what we need to do is have a God's worldview. A lot of times we're so convinced that our worldview is 100% what God's worldview is. Right? There's a lot of examples of that. But he says you're going to have to figure out, for this whole thing to work together perfectly, then we're going to have to figure out how to love one another. And we're not going to figure out how to love one another until we learn to think and look at what things are important and what things influence other people. I'll give you an example, some funny examples maybe, or not so funny. But on Facebook, I know Facebook, but just kind of, we're stuck at home and we're looking at Facebook because I got to have something to do, right? And it was funny. The first day, of the schools were off, I saw all these posts about, okay, day one of homeschool, give teachers $1 million a year, or things like that. And they're funny, and we do. People did get to learn the value of what other people go through on a daily basis. I have not as of yet seen all the posts. You know, day 10 of homeschool. Wow, those homeschoolers who choose to do this and don't get paid for it, they are really something special. I haven't seen those yet, but that is an opposite group, and I think that's while I joke about it, it is important. I think to look at other people and say, well, the, that is interesting that they get to live like this all the time, and I'm getting a taste for what their daily life is. I mean, this is what they do all the time. So, let me give you maybe another example. How many of you have enjoyed $1.39 a gas? Maybe you haven't. $1.39 for a gallon of gas. I've been enjoying that. One of the few things right now that I get to enjoy, and that's my perspective, and that's probably the perspective of the majority of you. How many of you know people who live in Texas or Louisiana or Oklahoma, or maybe you know people in Montana and North Dakota, people whose livelihoods and families depend on gas, and they might even be out of work. A lot of wells have been shutting down, and a lot of things have been going on, not just from the virus, but from other things in the world. You might not even know it. I know it because we have good friends who support a ministry that I'm a part of overseas, and that has some legs. Some of the problems have legs, and those are families who are very stressed right now. A lot of anxiety in people who derive their income from the energy sector. How many of you have prayed for the gas prices to go up, at least just a little, so that these people could have some security in their employment and in the stock prices, which affect their, their life savings? We don't think about that. We're so enamored of our own lives and the things that affect us on a daily basis that I think sometimes we forget them. Well, here's another one. Again, Facebook. You can't lie because I've been on Facebook. And I know a lot of you, and I might even been one of you at some point in time. How many of you have ever philosophically been opposed to entitlements or subsidies or various things like that? Talk about the welfare state, right? And maybe some of you have hedged on it by saying, well, I realize that there are some people who actually need it, but there's these people that live on it and in some way have spoken against the entitlement nature of a lot of portions of our country. Now, I want you to think about the fact, one other question, maybe not a fact, a question. I know it's a fact, but I don't know to whom I'm speaking, if it's a fact in you. But I know on Facebook that a lot of you at some point or another have made statements like those. How many of you are eagerly waiting and have already spent 1,000, 2,000, whatever the number is that is getting thrown around of this stimulus package, right? Think about the stimulus package and how many of you were opposed to the stimulus package when it was 2007 or 2008 when this stuff was being thrown around. When it was a different president who wanted to do a stimulus package, and we were against that. And now we've already spent the money before it's ever come to us, and may never come. If you ask me, it probably won't. But you've already spent it. Do understand that is welfare money, whether you want to call it that or not. It's an entitlement. You did nothing to earn it, and they're just going to send you a check if they do. Now think about this, because we say, well, there's people that are addicted to it. Okay, there's people who are addicted to it. People who are addicted, when something is taken away, like drugs, they get violent and they get angry. How many of you are angry at the Senate because they're fighting? Because of this or that, and they're not giving the funds to families. What you mean is they're not giving it to me. I haven't got a check yet, and the Senate won't agree to it, and I'm angry. I mean, we've only been talking about this for a week, and I'm already angry that I'm not getting my $1,000, and I might not. I've already gotten addicted to this, right? So I've gotten it myself into a position where I'm not only in a negative way thinking like the opposite group that I criticize. I'm getting to see what it's like to be them. Now I have an opportunity to think, well, maybe they have a different situation. Now I know what it's like to be in a difficult circumstance. There's a lot of groups that we have that are opposites. What I want to do is challenge you today to when we are ever able to interact as a group of people again, but maybe even in the store, to think about how the other half lives. When there's a two package of toilet paper available, and you go, I gotta grab both of those and hoard them. So you think about if there's somebody that could use a package and use one of yours, your limit to grab for somebody else, or what have you. Think like other people would think. Think about what their needs are, and in that way, let's love one another, so that we can make sure we don't devour each other. Thanks.